Today, we're going to dig into something fascinating: how our future is being built. And I'm not talking about dramatic headlines or big, flashy events. We're looking at the quiet, almost invisible background shifts, the new architectures, both digital and physical, that are completely rewiring our world.
So, how does this happen? How is our future actually constructed? Well, it's almost never a single grand decision. Instead, what you see is a slow, steady accumulation of a bunch of small, seemingly reasonable choices that, over time, add up to a whole new reality.
This quote from our source material just nails it, doesn't it? Massive shifts in power and control don't happen all at once in some big showdown. They happen step by step, with each little accommodation making perfect sense at the time. We're going to see exactly how this works through two very different, but you'll see, deeply connected case studies.
Okay, so first up, let's dive into the digital world. We're talking about a quiet but incredibly intense battle over the future of artificial intelligence. This whole thing came to a head over a huge $200 million contract between the AI lab Anthropic and the Pentagon. But here's the thing, this wasn't really about the money. No, this was a fundamental fight over what rules will govern the most powerful technology humans have ever created.
And this slide really lays out the two completely opposing philosophies here. On one side, you've got the AI labs. They're trying to build what they call a normative architecture. Basically, that means hard-coding ethical red lines directly into the AI. Things like, you cannot be used for autonomous weapons, or you can't be used for mass surveillance. On the other side, you have the Pentagon, and their number one goal is preserving strategic optionality. They want the ability to use this tech in any way they might need to in the future.
And the entire fight, believe it or not, came down to this one seemingly harmless phrase: all lawful purposes. Now, this is totally standard language in government contracts, but to the AI labs, this was a giant loophole. It was a backdoor that could let the government completely ignore all those carefully coded ethical rules anytime it decided it was lawful.
Now, it's crucial to understand, this isn't a story with good guys and bad guys. The Pentagon's position is driven by these powerful, totally logical pressures. They have to keep an edge over adversaries like China and Russia. They need to ensure stability at home. And above all, they can never, ever sign away a future capability. Their core incentive is to keep every possible option on the table. It's the logic of optionality.
All right, now stick with me, because we're going to pivot to a totally different domain where this exact same pattern is playing out. We're going to see how that same logic of slow, incremental change, driven by compounding pressures, is literally reshaping our physical world through climate change.
And the key, once again, is that this isn't about one single event. It's not one big hurricane or one terrible heat wave that defines the future. No, it's the relentless day-after-day accumulation of different stresses on all of our systems, creating a future that is slowly but very surely being rewired.
First, you've got the pressure of just pure, raw heat. In places like the American Southwest, days over 110, 120 degrees, they aren't rare anymore. They're becoming the new normal. And that puts this incredible, predictable strain on everything we depend on, from our water reserves to the electrical grid. Then you layer on the pressure from more intense storms. Along the Gulf Coast, for example, warmer ocean waters are like fuel for hurricanes, and this leads to a huge structural shift. When insurance companies start pulling out of entire states because the risk is just too high to calculate anymore, well, the fundamental economic architecture of that whole region starts to crack.
And third, you have this slow, almost silent pressure of rising water. In coastal cities all over the world, you get this double whammy of rising sea levels and the land itself sinking. And suddenly, what used to be a once-in-a-lifetime flood becomes a chronic, everyday problem that slowly makes these places unlivable.
And what makes this so incredibly difficult is that these pressures are often pulling in opposite directions. Our world is being simultaneously stressed by having way too little water in some places and way too much in others. The whole system is being pulled apart from both ends.
So when you put these two stories, the fight over AI and the battle with our climate, side by side, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. Let's call it the logic of creep. It's how a series of perfectly reasonable, logical steps can lead us, bit by bit, into a future that nobody ever consciously chose.
So, how does this creep actually happen? Well, it's a pretty straightforward process. First, a real problem comes up, a new security threat, a serious climate risk. Second, we deploy a perfectly reasonable solution to deal with it. But third, we become deeply, deeply dependent on that solution. And finally, that dependency becomes so critical. It's just part of our infrastructure. And at that point, it's pretty much irreversible. We've built a new architecture without even realizing it.
And the language used to sell these changes is so important. In both of these cases, the changes are framed with these positive, reassuring words, like security or resilience, but hidden right behind that language is the real risk, a slow, quiet, almost invisible erosion of the very safeguards and stability we thought we were trying to protect.
This all leads to the most important question of all, right? If these creeping changes are so powerful and so subtle, where on earth can we build guardrails? How do we actually embed constraints that can stand up to these huge structural pressures over the long haul?
Well, it turns out some places are a lot better than others. You can make a promise in a press release, but that's super brittle. You can put a clause in a contract, but hey, contracts can be renegotiated. Even a presidential executive order can be reinterpreted by the next person in charge. The only constraints that are truly durable are the ones embedded deep in the system itself, in actual legislation, in binding international treaties, and maybe most powerfully of all, right in the code and the hardware, in the architecture itself.
Because here's the hard truth. In the long run, the powerful logic of optionality, that desire to keep every future door open, it almost always wins. It will overpower good intentions and corporate principles every time, unless those constraints are basically unbreakable, baked right into the laws of the system, whether that system is built on legal code or computer code. And that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy thought. These architectural decisions, the ones being made in government contracts and in coastal planning meetings, they are happening right now. They are laying the foundation for the world we will all live in tomorrow. So the only real question left is, who gets to be the architect?